So, if you've heard the word value before, you've probably heard it in terms of like how much something is worth. I want you to erase that from your brain. When we're talking about value in art, we're talking about something completely different. In art, value is the lightness or darkness of something. So, we can see value in the amount of light that's cast on something. In photography, value is the most essential element of photography because photography is an art form based in light. Photo means light, graph means drawing, so technically photography is drawing with light. Light is what allows us to see things, and so value is really important in our understanding of the things that we're seeing. We have to see the light reflected off things. There are two main categories of the value vocab, and that is contrast and key. We just learned about form, and form is three-dimensional. And so value is what tells us that objects in our photograph have form, 3 dimensions. Tint is what happens when a light hits an object. So tint is also known as lighter values or highlights. Whereas shade is what happens when an object that is 3-dimensional moves away from the light. So that's also known as darker values or shadows. Contrast is our first sort of main conversation about value, and contrast is the transition between the lightest and darkest parts of a photograph. Low contrast means there's lots of different values in between dark and light. I find value easiest to see when it's in black and white, which is why all the photos in this slideshow are in black and white. When we get to color, you'll also see that value applies to color. But for introducing value, low contrast basically means there's lots of middle grays in between dark and light, so that, and also maybe there's not really very light lights or super dark darks. That would make a photograph low contrast. Typically, low contrast is going to make a photograph feel quiet, subdued, maybe old, muddy. Muddy is not a very nice word, but yeah. So that picture on the top, we have snow, so we know that the snow is white, but the whites in this image are really not that bright, and so this is a low contrast image. High contrast, on the other side, is when there's big jumps in between dark and light. So there's huge differences in value. We have major shades and really bright tints in an image. This would make your image feel more bold and dramatic. But as we can see from this poor dude, not always very flattering. When we apply a high contrast filter, or when an image is very high contrast, what it means is that the lights are getting lighter and the darks are getting darker. So any shadow on your face, under your eyes, under your nose, if it's high contrast, those shadows are going to be super dark, which is not usually very flattering. Key, on the other side, as Johnny Appleseed said, no, I don't know why it says Johnny Appleseed there, but key is the overall lightness or darkness of an image. So this is like, I call this the blurry eye test. So if you blur your eyes at an image, is it mostly light or mostly dark? Not every image is going to have a key. Not every image is going to be high or low key, but if it is high key or low key, it will be obvious. So high key is an image that is mostly light, meaning most of the values in the picture are tints. This first picture is high key, it's mostly light, but it's also high contrast. We have big jumps in between dark and light. There's not a lot of middle values here. The second image is high key, mostly light, but it's low contrast. There's really not many darks in here, and there's not a lot of middle values in between. High key images will make an image feel clean, so like Clorox, which is a bleach company, loves high key images, and anytime you see like a video that is supposed to be, or like a movie where someone's supposed to be in heaven, typically that would be high key. It looks sort of light and airy. Low key, on the other hand, is an image that's mostly dark. So this image is mostly dark. It's also high contrast. This is low key, mostly dark. High contrast, there's big jumps in between dark and light. This picture is low key, it's mostly dark, but there's a lot of middle values here. So we have a lot of middle grays in between dark and light. This might make an image feel spooky, sad, scary, quiet. Typically low key images are taken at night or in a dark place. And here's another example of low key, mostly dark, and low contrast, many values in between dark and light.